This episode of the Integrated Music Teaching Podcast is proudly brought to you by Forte. You're listening to the Integrated Music Teaching Podcast from Top Music. Tune in weekly as we interview music teachers and experts from around the world to explore creative activities and ideas that build learning connections in students. Our integrated music teaching approach will deepen your students' understanding of musical concepts, engage them in critical thinking, improve their reading and performance, foster their curiosity, and prepare them for a lifetime of music making. Hey there, teachers. It's Tim Topham here, and welcome back to the Integrated Music Teaching Podcast from Top Music Co. It's wonderful to be hanging out with you again this week. But you're not actually going to hear from me very much today because we've got a special episode. In today's show, we are going to be hearing from Christina Whitlock, who's actually been on my show a couple of times. And what we've done is, between Christina, Nicola Canten, and I, we have recorded each our own answers to the same question. And we're sharing it on each other's podcasts, if that makes sense. So my answers to the question are on Nicola's show, Nicola's are on Christina's, and Christina is here on our show today. So I recommend, once you've had a listen to Christina, go and have a listen to my answers on Nicola's show and Nicola's answers on Christina's show. I'll tell you where to find them, and you can grab all the links if it's just easier for you over on our show notes. Before you hear from Christina, I did want to share another one of our wonderful podcast reviews. Thank you so much for sending these in. I really love reading them. This one's from Katie, who says, "This podcast has been invaluable to me and my teaching. Much gratitude to Tim and all his guests who come on and share their knowledge and experiences in music and the piano. I am excited about the teaching journey I am on, and also for how much more I can offer my students now because of this podcast and all the creative people and places it points me to." Thank you so much, Katie, for sharing your review. I really do appreciate it. As we can't contact you through here, if you are listening to this and you've heard your review read out, please email us support@topmusic.co so that we can forward you a small thank you gift. And if you would like to leave a review and you've got a spare couple of minutes, we would so appreciate it. Just head to topmusic.co/iTunes if you need instructions. Otherwise, you should be able to do it through whatever podcast app you're listening to this on. Okay, so for our three-way podcast swap show for today, the topic we all answered was 3 things I'd like to change right now. And that was what we were given. So this could be on any topic, really. I've chosen to speak about music teaching ones, and that's over, as I said, on Nicola's show. And today we're going to be hearing from Christina, and I haven't heard it yet, so I'm not sure what she's talking about at all, but she is answering that same question. 3 things I'd like to change right now. Now, Christina, if you haven't met her, operates a lively independent studio from her home where she offers both private and group instruction. She discovered her love for piano teaching at the age of 14 and has enjoyed a full studio roster ever since. Christina is passionate about the life-changing power of music study and loves to share that enthusiasm with studio music teachers of all instruments and voice types. She hosts a weekly podcast titled Beyond Measure, and that's where you're going to be able to find her episode for today. And she fancies herself over there as everyone's, in quotes, anytime piano teacher friend. Christina thrives off the variety our profession has to offer and keeps busy with a whole heap of teaching, speaking, writing, and collaborative opportunities. This is a prime example of that. Let's check in with Christina.
Well, hello there, teacher friends of the internet. My name is Christina Whitlock, and if there's any chance you already listen to my podcast, which is titled Beyond Measure, you already know that I kind of operate under this delusion of being everyone's anytime piano teacher friend. I have been part of this piano teaching profession for a pretty long time now, and I just know how much benefit we all find in spending time with one another. So I love to provide a little bit of weekly solidarity for studio music teachers over on the Beyond Measure podcast every Monday morning. With that in mind, when Tim and Nicola and I were hatching this plan for a little podcast takeover trio, we were kind of intrigued by this question of, what would I change right now if I could? And I have to say that this is a question I have always loved. One time I was sitting in this non-musical strategic planning session for parents in our local public school system. And one of our activities was to answer this question. Like, if you could change anything about our school system right now, outside of any limitations or barriers or budgets or whatever types of things get in the way of our dreaming, like, what would you change? And I had a field day trying to answer that question, but I was sitting at a table with this very eclectic group of parents, and I was also fascinated at how much people struggled to come up with something in response to this question. Like, the woman beside me decided that her big, crazy, no-holds-barred dream for our school system was to begin offering a wider selection of beverages at lunchtime. And, I mean, maybe that's a valid change we could explore, but I just thought, really? With the state of education as it is, particularly in our community, I'm over here reinventing our entire approach to classroom instruction, and she's over there worried about soft drinks? But the truth is, a lot of us do not take regular time to think about what we would like to change. And honestly, in studio teaching world, that can really come to bite us if we're not careful. Because I think that doing things the way that they've always been done is pretty much a direct path to burnout and probably some really ineffective teaching. I know that the listeners of Tim's podcast here already agree with that. So I actually have probably too lengthy of a list of things that I would like to change. Some of them are more practical than others, but I will share 3 of those with you today. First of all, I'm going to start with this. I wish that our profession as a whole would change the mentality that more students is always better. Ooh, that's a good one, isn't it? Now, I was on this very podcast a few months ago talking about the fact that I underwent a significant downsize of my studio this year in an attempt to prioritize more time with my family. I implemented some group classes this year. I weeded out some students through a series of tuition increases. I did all the things, and they have been successful. It's been a really great year, actually. But I have this forever tendency to overcommit, right? You probably feel the same way about yourself. And that tendency still managed to show up in a pretty significant way this year, because somehow I managed to hit the jackpot on the homeschool community this year. And I found myself very quickly back to teaching 42 students each week. I am an energetic person, and I love people, and I love music, and I love teaching. And I thought for so long that all those things added up to this conclusion that I needed to teach as many students as possible every single week. And I have done that for about 28 years of my life now. But my very stubborn self is finally starting to realize, just like so many other things in life, maybe more is not actually better. I really care about delivering a personalized experience for each one of my students. I use an enormous collection of resources. I customize repertoire plans and other goals on case-by-case basis, and I have no desire to change that. But, of course, that kind of instruction takes time, and it takes brain power that we can't measure on a timetable. Do you know that every student on our roster, and every family for that matter, they all take up space in our brains? We carry around an astounding amount of information about each human being who sits across from us each week. One of my very favorite exercises to do is to sit down with a blank sheet of paper and write the name of one of my students at the top. Then I set a timer for like 2 minutes, and I try to list every single thing I know about that student. It's incredible the amount of knowledge that we have about things like what our students like, what type of instruction they respond well to, what kind of rep they like, what makes them laugh, what frustrates them, where they go to school, and what kinds of activities they participate in. I mean, I know a lot of things about a lot of people. I'm sure you do too. And for that reason, I have great relationships with these students because they know that I care about their entire self. Having a good relationship with my student is how I get them to really invest in their musical studies. It's a total win-win. But the more students a teacher collects, the more likely it is that some of those student relationships are going to get neglected. I just completed my latest rounds of student evaluations for the end of the school year, and I'll be honest with you, I noticed that I have some students who I have not been keeping track of as well as the others. And in every case, it has nothing to do with the student themselves, but more so like where they fall in my schedule or other seemingly inconsequential details. I have always hated how teachers of large studios wear their studio enrollment numbers like a badge of honor. Like, if you're in a Facebook group and someone asks how many students you're teaching right now, the people most likely to respond to that question are the people who manage to teach like 80 or 90 students in a week, right? And truly, I mean, if you teach a ton of students, bravo to you. You work really hard. I know. But there are trade-offs to the way that you spend your time. We all have them. And the longer I live and the more teacher friends I make, the more I see a very direct connection between my teacher friends who have a healthy, balanced life and those who have smaller studios. It's very interesting how those two things tend to correspond with one another. But growing up in this profession like I did, I always thought giant studios were the goal. Like, that's how you proved you were the best teacher, right? Like, the teacher with the most students must be the best teacher, right? Well, yeah, experience has definitely proven to me that that is not necessarily true. I guess it's kind of like practicing contentment, right? Like, learning to be happy with less of pretty much anything is always a good lesson to learn, yeah? And I think that there are two things that make this idea of collecting as many students as possible so difficult. For one, each student obviously brings with them a significant increase in our incomes, right? I mean, we're not just talking about a couple $1 an hour raise. So, of course, when we see the opportunity to make more money with just one more hour's work or whatever, I mean, it's really tempting, right?
Forte is the perfect solution for music teachers looking to build or grow their online music studio. With their revolutionary platform, music teachers can connect with a high volume of students from all over the world. Forte has already connected over 60,000 lessons and more than 3 million minutes of music instruction to date, with teachers from over 90 countries. Forte's extensive network of students provides music teachers with an unparalleled opportunity to expand their reach to more students. And once you're connected to more students, Forte's platform allows you to teach on an industry-leading video conferencing system purpose-built for music lessons. It offers Forte Pure Audio for crystal clear sound quality and other features that allow you to do your best teaching online, plus intuitive tools for building and scheduling. Now, music teachers can find students, teach, and manage their business efficiently all in one place. Visit fortelessons.com to learn more about their platform and how it can help you grow and run a successful online music studio.
Secondly, well, let's face it, friends, Our egos love seeing those studio recital photos with a billion smiling kids in them. It feels good to be wanted by families in your community. I mean, I know those families of prospective students who want in your studio can be very flattering. I get it. But going back to that point about money, I will just say this, and I know it's kind of controversial, but teaching fewer students does not have to mean you are making less money. I'm just going to leave that one there, but it's true. Fewer students does not need to equal less money. And to that point about the ego, well, I think it's just safe to say that that's a pretty slippery slope. And I know for me, as soon as I acknowledged that fact, like when I said out loud to myself that teaching a lot of students made me feel important and I enjoyed that vanity that comes with having so many students, well, that just helped clear up a lot for me, and I was not willing to accept that as solid rationale anymore. Whew, okay, that was a lot for my very first point. The next two are going to be shorter, I promise. But I do hope that I've helped you reconsider what you think of when you think of a full piano studio. More is not always better, regardless of any traditions in our field that might have led you to believe they were. Okay. Thing number 2 that I would change if I could, and I actually can change this and will, I would love to go back to having childcare in my home while I am teaching. Oh yeah, so I have 2 daughters. They are 6 and 12 as of the time of this recording. And when my oldest was a toddler, I learned the magic of having teenagers come to the house and play with her while I was teaching. The truth is, parents out there, that even when your kids are independent, as mine are, when you are simultaneously trying to be the parent and the teacher, you can't help but be half-hearted in your attempt at both. Meaning, you cannot be an all-star teacher while you are also wondering if your child is climbing something dangerous in the other room. Likewise, you cannot be an all-star parent while you're trying to teach someone a piano lesson. And let's just face it, we are all pretty much overachievers by nature, so that means we want the all-star status in every role we carry, right? So, anyway, I had learned the benefits of having cheap, casual childcare in home while I was teaching. And then came the pandemic, and of course, all of that went away because we didn't want extra people in our homes, right? And like so many things post-pandemic, that is something that has just never managed to return. And I mean, at 12 and 6, my kids are generally fine for the 2 hours that I'm teaching each night. But their homework does not always get done, and they do sometimes end up in some ridiculous arguments that I have to go break up. One of them eats way too many snacks because I'm not paying attention, and, it's a whole thing. So I would really love to change that. I want them to have someone here who is going to keep them engaged in something. Keep them on track, but also just participate in imaginative or creative play with them. And yes, someone to regulate those snacks. That is my number 2 thing I would change right now. Lastly, let's hit up number 3. I would like to be more content with a job well done. Okay, this is a little deep. That's just kind of how I roll. Bear with me here. So, when I say that I want to be more content with a job well done, I mean that, like many of you, I just feel like I need a lot of positive feedback so that I can definitely feel like I am on the right track. This is true in my teaching. It's true with the courses that I put out there for studio teachers. It's true of my roles in life as a wife and as a parent. I mean, it's a lot. Psychoanalyze me all you want, that's fine. But I think we live in a generation where we get, all of us, a little caught up in needing our accolades and our pats on the back. And if I haven't intercepted like a glowing compliment from a parent in a while, I know that I start to convince myself that my families must not be that impressed with me anymore. And if I don't hear feedback on a new podcast episode that drops, I just assume it was a total dud. I have this online course that focuses on fundamental beliefs that we need to carry as music teachers. And if I haven't heard from one of my course participants in a while, I convince myself that it's terrible. I mean, I'm a total mess. And I share that with you very vulnerably because I know lots of teachers who struggle with the same thing. We would all be wise to remember that at the heart of the matter, if your parents and your studio families are paying you, then they are happy with you. And if people are consuming your content, then they find value in it. And as far as your family roles are concerned, no one needs to earn their place in a family. We just are valuable to those people in our circles of influence, not because of anything we do, but just because we are there. So, this is me trying to do a better job recognizing that I bring value to all of these parts of my life and trying to remember that regardless of what external feedback I do or don't receive. By the way, I just have to point out that this is completely comical because the people in my life are actually really great at giving me positive feedback. I have become completely spoiled in that regard. And again, I just really want to do better. I suppose that just throws back to that whole idea of contentment that I talked about in our first point today, right? All right, friends. I just want to say thank you for listening today, and thanks to Tim for letting me take over the Integrated Music Teaching Podcast. I love it here. It's such a great show, so it's a huge honor to be back. Make sure you do check out my show, the Beyond Measure podcast that releases on Monday, because this week we're featuring Nicola Canton, who is offering her 3 changes. And then on her show that also releases on Monday, Vibrant Music Teaching, Tim will be offering his 3 ideas there as well. So I think this has been a really good time. I cannot wait to hear what Tim and Nicola are bringing to the table because, let's face it, we know it's going to be great. So, with that in mind, I say onward and upward to you, studio teacher friends of the internet. Let's go make a great difference in our world this week.
Hi everyone, I wanted to take a moment to let you know about an amazing community of music teachers ready to welcome you over at Top Music Pro. Top Music Pro is the global hub for music teachers looking to connect, learn, grow, and be challenged in both their teaching and studio businesses. Community members save time by accessing hundreds of step-by-step lesson plans, creative teaching frameworks, business guides, online courses, and workshops. We offer training in topics as diverse as music technique, lead sheets, website building, intermediate repertoire, group teaching, and special needs teaching. We also save you money through our extensive discounts, including those with Music Notes, Sheet Music Plus, Music Room, Office Depot, Tonebase, and many more. And if you like sheet music, all our members get a free book of studio licensed, beautifully engraved sheet music each and every month. As a valued podcast listener, you can check out the Top Music Pro community free for 14 days by heading to topmusicpro.com, clicking Join Now on our studio tier, and using the special coupon code IMTPOD23. That's all one word. So that's IMTPOD23. We can't wait to welcome you inside. Well, I hope you enjoyed having a listen to Christina. If you would like to hear my response to this, you can head over to Nicola's podcast. That's the Vibrant Music Teaching Podcast. You can search for that. I have a feeling that many of you will be listeners of that show as well. And Nicola's answers to the same questions are on Christina's Beyond Measure podcast. So you can search for Beyond Measure in whatever podcast app you are listening to this show on. And that's the end of the show for this week. It's been great hanging out with you. I hope you enjoyed our little 3-way swap idea. Let us know what you think. And if you would like us to do another episode on this and you've got a question that you would like us to answer together, let us know. Leave a message on the show notes on any of our 3 shows or on social media or in our Facebook groups, wherever you find us. We look forward to hearing from you. See you next week, everyone. How do you keep up to date with all the latest trends and research into music education? How do you connect with other teachers around the world and make sure your teaching stays fresh and relevant for students of all ages and stages both now and into the future? I created our Top Music Pro membership to be the one-stop shop for music teaching resources, training, support and community, and I'd love for you to come and join us inside. With over 40 comprehensive training courses, hundreds of teaching demonstrations and lesson plans, free monthly sheet music, discounts and all the business and pedagogy support you could ever need, Top Music Pro is the community you've been looking for. If you're ready to level up your learning from the podcast and join thousands of other teachers in our global network, head over to topmusicpro.com today. If you enjoy this show and want to hear more of our work, be sure to subscribe to this podcast wherever you're listening today. For links and resources mentioned in this episode, visit us at topmusic.co/podcast or check out the show notes. I'm Tim Topham, and this is the Integrated Music Teaching Podcast, a production of Top Music. Thank you so much for listening. Enjoy your week ahead, and I'll catch you next time.